This is a tutorial. I'd like to talk a little bit more about use animation sequence, a sequencer at Unreal to trigger multiple objects to animate. If you recall, this is one of the earlier tutorial. I have this animated boy in a scene. There is a trigger box. Once the player hit the trigger box, the boy will play different animation. Right. This is a single actor being triggered by the trigger box. However, if you have multiple objects in a scenario, for example, lighting, some animated objects, or some sound audio files, you can trigger these multiple objects with a single trigger box. So ideally, you want to organize everything along a sequence, and you can have this animation kind of like a video editing. You have multiple tracks. You can play them at a particular timestamp. So this is one of early tutorials I covered this technique. So here you can see I have multiple characters, multiple objects. I also have a track called event track, which you can program a BP. So that will be triggered when the timestamp hit this particular frame. And then I can animate the ceiling fan, I can animate the character talk to each other. You can see the interface is kind of like a video editing program. Okay, so today we'll do something like this in Unreal. Use a trigger box, trigger a sequence, and the sequence will play multiple objects. Before I start, I do want to mention is in sequence you can also animate a camera, like a fly through. For example, this is a project we did a couple of years ago, and we have this cut scene, which you have the camera in a first person view fly through the campus and then zoom into the classroom. However, this might not be a good practice in mobile VR or even the PC VR. It's just because it's very easy, you can introduce the motion sickness to your users. So be careful. You probably do not want to animate the camera fly too fast. Okay. So here I want to show you a little bit about the end result. Then we can break down step by step how to do this from scratch. So first, you can see in this scenario, I have this trigger box. By the way, if you want to create a trigger box, just go to create, place actor panel, and then you can type trigger box, which is basically an invisible volume, represent like a box. So whenever the player or some objects overlapping with the box, you can program a BP to make something happen. So this is called trigger box. Okay. Also, I have this animated boy, which is already there, and I have this light. This is new. I added to just give some dramatic effects. And I have this object, which is right now below the ground, which is the wall 3D model. So let me just play the final result so you can get an idea what is the trigger box will do. Okay, so I will use the Oculus link, and I'm going to play this in just want to make sure it's in a VR game mode. Okay, so let's play. Give you some idea what the scenario looks like. Okay, so I will wear my Oculus Quest. Okay, then you can see this is the scenario we did last time. So if I navigate, you can see the trigger box is actually invisible. You won't be able to see it. It's in the middle of this door. So if I land my teleportation to this trigger box, it will trigger the box, right? So once the box is triggered, you'll hear the audio, and then you'll hear you see the objects being animated is moving up. After this boy start to dance, then the audio play again, the box going down, the lighting come move from the green light to yellow light, right? So this is how the trigger box can be used to create this really interesting sequence of animation. All right, so let me exit. You might have an error message. That's okay. Just to play this one more time in maybe first person view, it's easier. You can see the result. BP first person mode. I will probably just play in a viewport. Okay, so this is the first person mode. If I move in, as soon as this player interact or overlapping with the trigger box, right, you'll see the lighting is changed. The audio is actually can be played. You probably cannot hear the audio during the recording, but also you see the boys, the animating, the lighting is changing slowly from yellow to off. Then you see the objects is going down. Okay, so this is how this will be triggered. This can also be triggered from the third person view, BP third person. Although the third person is not a really good one for mobile VR, the reason is this robot has a very complicated shader, uh, like glowing or reflective material, which might not be rendered correctly. But I just want to show you, as soon as this robot overlapping with the box, you see, you hear the sound. You also see these boxes being animated. The boys start to dance. The light come from blue, green to yellow, then off. Okay, so I will show you how this is organized as a sequence. The first thing you want to do is this button allow you to create a level sequence. You can also do a master sequence, which can embed multiple level sequence. So we'll just do a simple one called test 2, add a level sequence. I already did this, but I want to show you how exactly this level sequence looks like. Okay, so once I create a level sequence, or maybe let me just do from scratch so you can see everything I have done. So create a new level sequence, right? And then you have to save the sequence in somewhere. So I will save it here. I think my previous one is called, what is the name of that level sequence? Um, I think I save it here. Step in room, right? So this is the level sequence name. So let me give this name step in room 2. Okay. All right, so this is a brand new sequence. And here you have tracks. You can see the track is kind of like a video editing program, Adobe Premiere, After Effects. You can have multiple tracks. For example, you can have a camera track. For us, as I mentioned, we don't want to animate the camera, which causing a lot of motion sickness. So I will add a few things. For example, I will add audio track. In audio track, you can add audio. For example, we have an audio file is called mass call, which is actually audio I download free. So that's something you can add in. For by the way, if you want to add audio, I can show you really quick. The audio file, if it's MAV file, WAV file, you can just simply drag and drop into Unreal Content Browser. Then it will generate this UI set. If you do have MP3 format, which is very common, music file format, you can convert to WAV. Just Google convert MP3 to WAV. There's a lot of online free app. You can do it directly through a browser. So once you bring a WAV wave file into Unreal, it's automatically generate the sound asset. And here you can change, for example, looping, volume, pitch. There are many ways you can play with it, right? So what I have is a really simple sound. It's basically like a announcing the something exciting gonna happen. Very short. Okay. So by the way, I think we have this track in. Let me just double click this step in, right? Step in room 2. So this is a sequencer. I have this sound right here in the sound audio track. Then let's talk really quick about the frames, right? By default, I think this is placed 30 frames per second. So you can sort of tell if I have, for example, 120 frames, that is roughly equals to 4 seconds, right? So not very long. So if I want to have this one, let's say 10 seconds, right? I will just type 300. So So that's 300 frames total. Right? So you can definitely play with these values to just make sure you drag this right color bar so you can reach to 300. Or maybe I can do 600. Depends how long you want this sequence be. Okay. So I have this soundtrack maybe start as a 0 frame, then play 4 seconds. Maybe I can go here towards the end of it, and then I will add the audio again uh, to play the same sound, right? So here I can just say uh, this audio, right? I will just simply add the same audio track. Oh, we can do 2 audio track. That's cool. Then you can have maybe plus again, and then you choose mass call, right? So this will separate 2 audio tracks. So it really depends on how you want to add it. You can also right click, you can mute, you can delete, and also for the same audio track, if you start with a different frame, you can add another audio. Um, I don't know, maybe just do this again. So this music will play twice, one at the beginning, one towards the middle. Okay, so that's the audio. So let's keep going. The next thing I want to do for this sequencer is I want to maybe animate the lighting. So here, if I select the light, and then I will go to add track. Then I have this option called add actor to sequence. Because I have this point light selected, so by default, it will ask me, hey, do you want to add this point light into a track? I say yes, so let's do that. And then you have a couple of options to animate the property of the light. Okay, so let me just say the point light, I have intensities, right, and also color. I could go ahead to animate. This is a very common concept in video editing. It's called keyframe. So for example, in the frame 001 or 000, doesn't matter, I will go ahead animate the light, right? So maybe at the beginning, I will click this add keyframe. So it will record the intensity as 8, and then I go to another frame. I will change the intensity, I don't know, to 80, so that's 10 times brighter, and then I click add a new keyframe, right? So in between, you will see this intensity value will change from 8 to 80, right? So you have this kind of animated lighting effects. So that's really cool. You might also notice is as soon as you change this, drag this light into the track, I think the light original is the static, so it's automatically switched to stationary because we are animating the light, right? So it's not a static light anymore. Be careful, in a mobile VR, this could be quite expensive. Usually you only want to have one light as a stationary. Have too many light as a dynamic, it's gonna hurt the frame rate. So I just keep this single light as a stationary. Also for the sake of frame rate, I turned off the shadow. I don't want this actually casting the shadow to other dynamic objects, which could hurt the frame rate. So here in the shadow, you can see I already turned off the casting shadow. Okay, so that's how I animate the intensities. You can do the same thing to animate RGB values. So I will leave this to you. It's really straightforward. If you have this uh, RGB value as 111 at some point, you can just keyframe this and then go to another frame. If you change R value, I don't know, to 0, and then you click keyframe again, you will see the R value will change from keyframe 1 to keyframe 2. Okay, so that's how you animate the lighting. The same idea you can apply to animate an object. So for example, here, this is object. I have put this object in as a movable objects. I think right now it's set as static, but it doesn't matter. Once you bring that uh, into the track, you are not able to actually bake the shadow anymore. So it became kind of like a movable objects. But let's do that. So I select these objects then using the same way, right? Add track, add actor to the track, add wall door 3, so it's in, and you can see it's automatically changed it to a movable. Right? And for this object, you can see the transform are the values I can animate: location, rotation, and scale. So for example, I want this be, you know, the z value will be negative 220 in the frame 03, but in another frame, I want the z value be, I don't know, 0, so it's moving up, and I want to click key. So in between, I see this object is moving up. Okay, so that's how you animate the objects, animate the lighting along this timeline. Right. So this is very convenient if you have a complicated scenario being triggered by something. In this case, this is more like a smart building idea. Once you get into the door, right, you triggered the sensor, then the light is on, the robot is welcoming you, and also your TV screen is moving up, play the news, and also lighting is automatically on. So that could be something you can think about to program. Okay, so that is the sequencer. I do want to delete this one because I already have one already, so I don't want to do redundant. So I will go ahead, delete. Okay, force delete. Okay, so that one's gone, and you can see this is one I made earlier, which has this animated character as well. So we have the wall, right, being animated. We have the point light being animated, which is changing the color, also changing the intensity, right? And also we have this boy, which is the default. So I bring the boy in, and you can see this boy has animation called dancing. So we will dance a little bit in start from frame 60. Right? So the way you can add animated boy, any character is the same. You just pick it up, right, and add the track, add actor to sequence. Did I select the boy? Yeah, since I add him in already, so it doesn't want you add it again. So let me using the other animated uh, NPC as an example. So select add to sequencer, and here you can add test. Right. So this is the boy's name, test. And then you can see here on the track, I can add animation. Because we have 3 animations, so you can have option you want. You can add a walking animation. So this boy will start to walk at the beginning, and then you can control when you want this animation start, how you want to make it end. You can have multiple animation lined up along the timeline. So it's pretty flexible. You can have animated capture as a part of sequence. Okay. If you have 2 characters, you can have one start dialogue, another one start responding right after the dialogue, right? So this is all based on the kind of consequence. All right, so I will delete this since I don't want this animation being triggered. So let's go ahead. Where's the delete? Here we go. Okay, so I have the bell boy wave. He's right here. We also have point light. We have the objects. We have audio. Okay, be triggered. The next thing, let's talk quickly about how this animation sequencer, which is the one you can drag it to your scene, so you can make it visible here. In the properties, you have some options. You can make it play automatically, so no trigger needed in this case. You can make a loop. In my case, I want to keep it just a single play, no looping. You can also control the play rate and the play start offset. So it's a pretty cool. You have many options to control the timeline of this sequencer. Since I'm not doing this as autoplay, so I have to find a way to trigger it, right? So the trigger box I have right now here, I can add this level blueprint, the level blueprint, you can see I already have this really simple script, which is called onActor begin overlap. This is the default. If you select the box and go to the level sequence, right click, you automatically have this option is called collision. You can add collision on begin overlapping or end overlapping, right? So in our case, I want to just do a begin overlapping, which is automatically, create this event trigger right here. All right, so once you have this trigger, then we'll do a little bit testing. So the first thing I did is I want to make sure whenever actor overlapping with it, I'll delete this, I don't need. I want to make sure this actor, this is called other actor, right? So if you have a first person pawn, third person pawn, or the VR pawn collide with the trigger box, they will be recognized as the other actor. So you want to make some measurement. I use this node is called get player pawn, which is index 0. I want to compare if this actor is the player pawn. So the answer is yes or no, right? If it's something else, for example, if I accidentally threw an object into the collision box, which is not the player, so that will be false, right? But if I step into the trigger box, I am the player, it will trigger true. So this is a really nice kind of checkpoint. You make sure the object collide with the trigger box is the player, not something like you shoot a bullet or throw an object accidentally into the trigger box. And here I did a print screen a string. This is a pretty handy as a kind of debugging tool. So if it's player, I would say yes, this is a player. Okay, just give yourself a little bit confirmation. If it's not, you can say, hey, what is it? Right. So just give yourself a little bit clue. Okay, so once we know the player collide with the trigger box, then we just simply play the sequencer, right? So the way to bring the sequencer into it, into a level blueprint is you select the sequencer, which is right here, right? And then you right click, you can say add reference to step in room. This is the name of the sequencer. So once you create this reference, and then you can click play. Actually, this is a pretty handy. You can play sequencer, right? So that's the default way you can activate the sequencer to play from frame 0. So that is basically play, right? So you trigger that sequencer. That's the entire logic. I will do a little bit comment. I will say here is, I call this as a trigger sequence by a trigger box. Okay, so yeah, that's a good. What is this one we did before? Source. Oh, this is basically play the video, right? So just add a comment here. Play video media player. Yeah, just play video media. Okay, that's good. All right, so I think that's it about how to trigger the sequence. Oh, one more thing I want to mention is if you're using the third person, all right, character, you see the third person character already have a collision box. And that's the reason when it's triggered, right, collide with the trigger box, it will generate an event. You can actually see that in the collision is called generate overlapping events. That's how it works. If I take a look at my first person BP game mode, right, first person pawn, and this guy actually also has this trigger box, the capsulate, right? This capsule represent the body, can have a collision event be triggered. So here the same thing, you can see the collision, you can trigger this overlapping event. So however, in the VR pawn, by default, it doesn't have a collision objects. So what I did is I just simply add, then I add this capsule, which represent the objects you can collide with. You can definitely play with the scale, the dimension, how large it should be. Um, but I think in general, as long as you have something there, it should be fine. You can represent maybe a little bit more accurate on the body of your VR palm. So, and this one just make sure in the collision property you want to trigger the overlapping events, which will compute all the overlapping dynamic objects, which including the trigger box. Okay, so now I think if I play a game through either first person VR Pong or third person, whenever the player step into it, it will be triggered. So let's close this. What is this one? I think I have. Oh, I put this sequence. Oh, this is the new one I just created. I will delete. Um, so this is the step in room sequence. Right. Right. Click. Edit. Right. Oh, there's one thing. It sometimes could be confusing. Is if you are inside the sequencer play mode, you might be see the lighting is blue. The boy is animating. Um, but this is actually not the real default status because you are in the frame 210 now. So in order to see the real beginning of the sequencer, you will have to close it. And this is just the environment without being triggered by the sequencer yet, right? So this is actually the true default scenario. So let's go ahead and play. So I'm in the first person view mode. I can go in, I triggered, and then you see, yeah, it's pretty cool. All right, that's how this smart building idea could be realized. Okay, if I'm doing this in the VR mode, I think I can do even in the first person view. I just want to see, can I do a VR? Let's do a standalone game. Just curious, let's try that. Okay, so I wonder, let me just wear the VR headset. Yeah, I can still see it. And then I'm going to use the motion controller to move. This is not using mouse and keyboard. So if I go there, yeah, I triggered this animation. I see the objects being animated. The boy start to dance, and the audio play the second time is going back to the default. Okay, very cool. All right, so let me exit. Give me a warning. That's okay. I think that's it about everything on the level sequencer. I hope this will be helpful for you if you want to create a sequence of animated objects. Just using this sequencer, this will be a really user-friendly video editing interface you can play with. Okay. Hello, I just want to play one more time with audio recording from my computer. I just realized that video audio recording is not on in my last one. So hopefully you can hear the audio this time. So triggered. So this is audio. The audio will play twice. At the beginning, we'll play once the light is being turned on, intensity is going up. Then play again, the intensity is going down. So this is how the light is being dimmed off. All right. So after I finish this in VR mode, it's always a good idea you package this into the Quest standalone and see the final result. It might look quite different because the Oculus Link is a PC VR. But when you package into Android, which will be a mobile VR, the effects might look quite different, especially because this one I'm using a dynamic light. I believe as a limitation for Quest 2 is only allow you to do one directional light as as stationary light. So I don't think the point light will actually work in this case because it doesn't count the point light as dynamic. Um, so that's something we can check. If not, we probably have to switch the light, redo it with a directional light, or you can just keep the light as a static. So I will do a package. In fact, I already did a package and I did the installation to Quest. So we'll take a look. So I'm going to run as simple as a side quest, so you can see what I see from my installed mobile VR. So here I'm going to do a stream, and I will do the start stream with the Quest 2. So you can get an idea what that interface looks like. Okay. Okay. So here you can see my wheel. Uh, then I can use where's my motion controller right here. Okay, so I'm in the room. I'm go ahead. Hold on. I think my display looks really strange. Let me close it. Um, Always on top. Maybe I should using this. Let me see. Okay, not really. I think I should switch back to Quest 2 crop. Okay, and then start stream. Okay, so there's some view issues on my screen, but I think it looks okay on the computer. So anyway, I will go ahead, click here, and then click the VR5 and run the app. Um, so I just want to show you, this looks pretty okay here, but if you really trigger the trigger box, you can see everything is animated except the lighting, because we are using a point light as stationary light. It doesn't really work with Quest 2. So either I have to switch back to so directional light, or I just leave the light effects off from this sequencer. But I hear the audio. The audio should work pretty okay. All right, so that's unfortunately some of the limitations. So here I can restart, do it one more time. You can see the animated sequence. Okay. I don't think I hear the audio neither. That is strange. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I hear the audio. Let me just do one more time. Make sure we're not missing it. Figure the sequence. Oh yeah, I hear the audio. It's very, very low. As I have this TV is playing the audio, which is way louder. Yep, the audio is actually there. Okay, so you got an idea. This is how this might looks quite different in in the mobile VR compared to the PC VR. Okay, but again, in the future, if I want to change it, I probably want to change this back to the directional. Since the lighting don't really have intensity and color can be animated, so I just changed my mind. Maybe I will just simply do this lighting as on and off. So I add this point light back in this static mesh. Sorry, in this level sequence. Um, Let me just do a really from scratch. So if I will show you delete this, right? So if I go ahead, create a new point light, And I'll make this light, let's say, really, let's put it here. Okay, so this is the light. Let's change this light to static, right? So it's a static light. And then I will add this static light into the sequencer. I just want to do a test. Actor to sequencer, add to point light to sequencer, right? So this is in, and it's still static light, right? You can tell from here. So what I will do now is to, instead of animate the intensities and the color, I will just add a track called visibility. Now, this is actor hidden in game, and by default is visible. So what I will do is in the frame 0, which is visible, I will add a keyframe. Then in the middle, here I will turn it off, add a keyframe. So it's automatically create this kind of on, off, on, off. And here I will add another keyframe and called on. And go here, I will add another keyframe called off. Add another keyframe here called on. Here another keyframe called off. And another keyframe called on. Okay, so basically the effects will be, these lights will be on and off 3 times. Um, let's make this intensity really high so we can see the result a little bit easier, 80 maybe. Okay, I will make the light as I don't know, blue. Okay, so now let's save the file. I will probably make the light a little bit smaller radius. I don't want to influence too far away, so maybe 500. Yeah, that's good enough. The reason I didn't add another directional light because I already have a sunlight. I think it will be really awkward to have two directional light in one scene. So I want to keep things simple. So now it has this trigger, right? On, off, on, off, on, off 3 times. So let's go ahead, save all. Then I will go ahead play. Let's do this in the first person BP just to testing the idea. So by default it's on, right? So if I get closer, trigger, right? So it should be on, off 3 times. So it's on, it's off, right? Then it will be on again, okay? And then we off again. Yeah, I think this is pretty cool. So you have some kind of lighting be triggered 3 times. Okay, let's try this again. Right, you hear the audio, you see the lights is on and off. I want to actually make this a little bit faster. I think this will be nice. So maybe here I will add another visibility. Okay, so there's some kind of flashing light. Okay, so let's play again. Trigger. Right, you see the light is being flashed multiple times. Okay, so I will go ahead build this lighting. So I will go ahead build the lights only. Then I will package this into Quest 2 again. I just want to see if this animated light will be visible in Quest 2 standalone mobile VR, and if the performance, the frame rate gonna be hurt. Right. So I will let you know once I build a new one. Just to keep you posted, I did another package, and unfortunately, these lights, the visibility will not be controlled. Even I switch from static to stationary, it's not gonna be rendered through the Quest 2. So that is good to know. I don't think it's a waste of time, but we know this kind of animated light is good for PC VR, but not good for the mobile VR. If you do want to trigger the visibility, maybe just turn off and on one time. I believe you can do this through the level sequence, which could be the alternative way. Um, like, well, there are many ways you can do it. So we do have this It's called event begin play. So you could make this, like this one. Once the overlapping trigger the sequence, when you play the sequence, and here you could add another script to control the visibility of the light. So let's try that. I just want to see if there's an alternative way to turn on, turn off the light multiple times. So maybe I will do this is to add this light scene, create a reference, and here I will just say visibility. So you can set visibility of the light, set actor hidden in game. Um, or you can do the toggle visibility if it's on off. So let's do this set actor hidden in game. Uh, so once you get into the door, this will be invisible. Um, if you do want to actually, yeah, let's do that, and then delay. I don't know, maybe 3 seconds. Then you turn on the visibility. I will using the set actor hidden in game again, but this time I wanna make the hidden off, right? So it'll be visible after 3 seconds. So this maybe could be an alternative way you can control the lights in some kind of linear fashion. So let's just play and see if that works. And this light could be static in this case, I think. With nothing to do with the sequencer now, right? It just, hey, the sequencer being triggered. Um, Maybe let's do another delay here. I want to delay 1 second. Then if you turn off the light, after another 3 seconds, it turn on the lights. Okay, so let's try that. Play. Oh, I have to change the player to first person BP just for make it easier to see. Okay, so now if I go, everything's triggered. Right, you see the light is on. It's off for 3 seconds and it's on again. Okay, so this is not bad. Yeah, it's on. Okay, right. It's turned on and then off. Just I want to change this a little bit to, let's do 3 seconds. Then the duration I will do 5 seconds. Right. So is will be remain hidden for 5 seconds, and then turn on again. Okay, let's try that. So the default trigger is off, then it's on again. Okay, that's good. All right. So I will go ahead publish this into mobile VR, and then I will let you know if this one works. So after the packaging and I did a test, again no luck. So as a conclusion, I think in mobile VR you should not animate a light, which just keep all your point light as static. Even you add this visibility control, because it's static, it's not really gonna impact the lighting unless you do the stationary light, which is the direction light. Then you have the control on its visibility, the color, the intensity. But other than that, all the static light do not try to animate. But again, if you find some alternative solution, let me know. I would be happy to know if you can find a trick or to kind of create a simulated animation for the light through some tricks. All right, I don't think it's a waste of time. Again, this is really good to know what you can do with PC VR, what you can do with a mobile VR. Right, lighting is always a very important thing to animate in the mobile VR. But for animated objects, animated captures, um, Also, I do not cast in the shadow, which is pretty cheap to do. It does not hurt any frame rate. So I would encourage you to put those tracks into your sequencer: audio, animation, character, animated object. In the future, you can do the event. So there's many way you can create really dynamic interactions between among multiple objects. All right, I think that conclude this sequencer